Rasheeda Frost just shut down the entire internet narrative in one sentence, and the Real Housewives of Atlanta fandom is still trying to process what actually happened. After months of increasing tension with her husband Kirk, cryptic social media posts, and constant speculation about whether their marriage was imploding on camera, Rasheeda went live and made the declaration that nobody saw coming. "I ain't leaving, Kirk." 4 words. No elaboration, no explanation of what's been happening behind closed doors. Just a full stop to every theory, rumor, and expectation that their relationship was heading toward a public breakdown. The problem? Nobody believed her. Twitter exploded within minutes. TikTok cut up the video into 1,000 versions. Instagram comment sections turned into courthouse proceedings where people were debating the subtext of her tone, the length of her pause before speaking, and whether she was reading from a script Kirk handed her. Fans weren't questioning her words. They were questioning the conviction behind them, and the timing made everything worse because Rasheeda dropped this statement right after a particularly messy episode of the show aired that had viewers convinced Kirk was about to get the boot. What actually set this off was a combination of factors that had been building for seasons. The show's recent episodes featured increasingly uncomfortable moments between them. There were arguments about his behavior, pointed comments during group scenes, and most tellingly, entire conversations where they weren't even in the same room during filming. By the time the latest episode aired, there were dedicated Reddit threads analyzing their body language. Instagram followers were running polls about whether the marriage would survive the season, and entertainment blogs were already writing, sources say, pieces about separation talks. Then Rasheeda did something that's become less common in the reality TV space. She didn't wait for the narrative to be written for her. She didn't grant an exclusive interview where she could carefully control the message. She didn't go on a podcast to explain herself. She just made a statement, presumably from home, and let it sit there for everyone to dissect. The immediate reactions fell into predictable camps. One group of supporters celebrated her commitment and told everyone criticizing her to mind their business. A fair point given that this is ultimately her marriage, not a spectator sport. Another massive faction of viewers treated her statement like evidence rather than a fact, insisting that someone stays in a relationship under pressure, and this could be exactly that situation. A third group just didn't believe the marriage drama was even real, suggesting the whole thing might be constructed for television purposes, which is a fair skepticism for a reality show. What made this particularly explosive was the historical context. Rasheeda's been on the show long enough that people remember her previous struggles. Fans have watched her navigate tough moments before, and they claim they can tell the difference between a couple working through something versus a couple performing partnership. The claim going around was that Rasheeda's energy in this season was noticeably different than past seasons when she and Kirk had actual conflict, but seemed genuinely connected. This time, people were saying it felt colder, more performative. Kirk hasn't made any major public statement in response, which somehow made the situation worse. His silence was interpreted as everything from guilt to intimidation to simple indifference. Entertainment commentators started pointing out that a partner who loved you would probably immediately reinforce your statement publicly, and Kirk's absence from that equation became its own narrative. One entertainment blogger noted that his social media presence had been eerily quiet during the exact period when Rasheeda was giving interviews and making public statements, which usually doesn't happen in celebrity marriages unless someone's being told to stay silent by a lawyer or a publicist with damage control orders. The show's producers also remained conspicuously quiet, which was weird because usually by this point in a season, there are leaked statements about how they're committed to telling the truth and letting cast members' real lives unfold. The silence suggested maybe the network knew something that hadn't aired yet, or there was active discussion happening behind the scenes about how to handle the situation going forward. The show's producers also remained conspicuously quiet, which was weird because usually by this point in a season, there are leaked statements about how they're committed to telling the truth and letting cast members' real lives unfold. The silence suggested maybe the network knew something that hadn't aired yet, or there was active discussion happening behind the scenes about how to handle the situation going forward. Former Real Housewives cast members and alumni started weighing in on Twitter, and it got uncomfortable fast. One former Atlanta cast member posted that she'd been in a situation where she had to make public reassurances about her marriage that weren't entirely honest, and she knows what that particular tone sounds like. Other reality TV veterans were more diplomatic, but basically said the same thing. When you're truly solid with someone, you don't usually have to announce it to millions of people. The fashion community got involved too, which is relevant because Rasheeda's built a significant part of her brand around her boutique business and style. Designers and fashion influencers who've worked with her started commenting on her Instagram posts, and the subtext in a lot of those comments had an odd, "we're here for you" energy that suggested people in her immediate professional circle might know something we don't. Tabloid outlets ran with different angles. Some went the sympathetic route, positioning Rasheeda as a woman defending her marriage against internet judgment. Others took the more sensational approach, running headlines that basically called her statement a denial, which obviously provoked more debate about what she even needed to deny. There was also the inevitable sources close to the couple coverage, though notably, there were competing sources saying different things, which usually means both the show's producers and the couple's representatives were feeding different narratives to different outlets. The theological angle emerged too, which shouldn't be surprising given that faith is part of Rasheeda and Kirk's public identity. Some viewers and commentators suggested that her statement needed to be understood through that lens, that leaving wouldn't be an option for her regardless of circumstances, which is a legitimate cultural and religious framework, but also made a lot of people uncomfortable because it raises questions about whether someone's religious beliefs might be keeping them in a situation they'd otherwise leave. What really tilted things into chaos was when some old tweets and forum posts started circulating. Years-old comments from various accounts claiming to be people who knew Kirk or had encountered him in Atlanta were dredged up, and while none of it was verified or even necessarily credible, it created this atmosphere where people were suggesting Rasheeda had always been making excuses for him publicly. These old posts became evidence in people's minds that this was a pattern, not a one-time moment. The merchandise and sponsored content angle came up too. Some marketing professionals on Twitter pointed out that Rasheeda had upcoming product launches and collaborations, and a very public marriage implosion would complicate those deals. This led to accusations that her statement was purely transactional, that she was protecting her brand and her coins rather than her actual relationship. Whether that's fair is debatable, but it did add another layer to people's skepticism. Entertainment news outlets started treating this as an ongoing story rather than a single moment, which meant every time Kirk posted on Instagram, every time Rasheeda shared a couple photo, every time they did or didn't appear together on social media became news. TMZ had multiple updates a day for like a week straight. The Shade Room's comments section became a complete battleground where people weren't even arguing about Rasheeda anymore. They were just fighting with each other about what constitutes a healthy relationship and whether reality TV is even real. Podcasters who cover the show went nuts. There were entire episodes dedicated to analyzing that four-word statement. Some hosts brought in therapists or relationship experts to discuss what might actually be happening. Other shows played the clip over and over from different angles, as if changing the camera angle would somehow reveal hidden truth. One podcast actually had people vote on whether they believed her, and the results showed roughly 60% of voters didn't think she was being truthful, which the host then discussed as if it was data that mattered. The show's other cast members were put in an awkward position too. When the reunion inevitably comes up, they're going to be asked to comment on Rasheeda's situation, and nobody wants to be the person who contradicts someone's public statement about their own marriage. But if they just validate her, they're complicit in whatever's actually happening. It's a trap that reality TV creates constantly. Behind the scenes, assuming there was actual conflict, Kirk and Rasheeda's marriage became the most publicly dissected relationship in the franchise at that moment. Every micro-expression on camera, every word choice in captions, every absence from stories, it all had meaning assigned to it. The parasocial relationship, that ijawi, incre viewers have with reality TV stars meant that people genuinely felt invested in solving this puzzle, and Rasheeda's statement felt less like a conclusion and more like she'd thrown gasoline on a fire. What quotes? Interesting is that her statement, intended presumably to shut down the narrative, actually accelerated it. If she'd said nothing, the show would air, people would argue about it for a news cycle, and it would move forward. By making a public declaration, she gave everyone something, concrete to argue about, and the internet did exactly what it does with concrete statements. It dissected every angle, questioned the sincerity, and created an entire secondary narrative about why she felt compelled to say it at all. The speculation about whether producers encouraged or discouraged this statement is probably fair. Reality TV networks have a vested interest in keeping cast members on the show, and a public relationship implosion is bad for business when you're trying to maintain the illusion that these are real people with real problems, not just characters performing drama. But going completely silent is also suspicious, because it looks like there's something to hide. A managed statement walks a middle line, and Rasheeda's 4 words might have been exactly what someone advised her to say. Quat by Oli Hafti for one boss data in a broad